If Baylor and Colorado are unknowingly having a culture Cold War, well, who's winning?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Bears fans, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Gametime and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. Today, we talk Colorado. First, we talk about Baylor's quarterback situation. Then, what the Buffs have cooking up there in Boulder, and is it what you want in a football program? And then also what Dave Aranda said about the atmosphere at McLean and who that could be helping when it gets better. All that and more coming up on this Locked On Baylor episode, starting with who is going to play quarterback for the Baylor Bears on Saturday. It seemed pretty obvious a few days ago. Sawyer Robertson was the guy. He looked like he was in command of the offense. He looked the better of the two quarterbacks and certainly the more healthy of the two quarterbacks. Initially, we heard a rib injury with Dequan Finn. Then it became a shoulder injury. And he was apparently in a sling all week and nobody saw it because we didn't get the announcement until Saturday that he was not going to play. Now, that makes some sense from a Baylor standpoint. I'm surprised that no one saw him in the sling. But from a Baylor standpoint, if you guys know internally who's going to play, why put it out there that it's not going to be Dequan Finn? I get that. And apparently, Dequan is getting a little bit better. So the latest on Dequan Finn is that, well, here's what Dave Aranda had for the latest on Dequan Finn.
We're going right now day to day. Dequan's out of his sling. And so we had practice this morning. So he was able to move around better. There's limitations on what we can do per day. But I think we're in a good spot. We had the Player of the Game award that we do when we win. Sawyer won that award. And so the team was really fired up and excited for him. And so, we're going to take it, see what brings tomorrow, what Dequan can do, and see how we progress, and hope to have an idea of what's it going to be prior to Saturday.
So he did not say one way or the other who the starter is going to be. I would find it quite miraculous if Dequan Finn could come out and start against Colorado. That was the throwing shoulder. It was the right shoulder. That was the right arm in the sling. So I notice Dave said, we got to move it around a bit. Not, hey, how can he throw it, Dave? Because he was kind of short on some of those throws even before the injury that we know of as the injury. And you really think after he wasn't well enough to go on Saturday that a week later he could be in there in a conference game on the road? I doubt it. And honestly, if I had to guess, I would guess this is a smokescreen of saying, hey, we don't know. Maybe Dequan Finn can be out there, but, I guess you're just going to have to prepare for both. If I had to guess, that's probably the way it is. But on the depth chart that was released this week, it still says Dequan Finn or Sawyer Robertson as the starter for Baylor. And I really wish there was a way for Dequan to come in for some packages to really, take advantage of the athleticism that he has. And, it's not, he wasn't great with the deep ball, but it's not like he can't deliver the ball at all. So you bring him in for some running packages, and then all of a sudden you mix in some play action, maybe down in the red zone, down in the goal line. And that's a good weapon to have out there for RPO. That said, he didn't get pulled because he stunk. He got pulled because he was hurt. And I don't know that you just throw him out there a week later after missing a game due to a shoulder injury, a throwing shoulder injury. I don't think you throw him out there the next week as, the old Blake Bell package in Oklahoma, the belldozer, and just have him lower his shoulder and run for first downs. I don't think that's the way they go. But I also think that these two quarterbacks, Sawyer Robertson or Dequan Finn, are very different in terms of the way you game plan around them. And I think this is probably Dave Aranda saying, you guys have to study for both. Not going to give you any edge here, but you guys have to study for both. Dequan Finn and Sawyer Robertson, very different quarterbacks, stylistically, very different strengths. And so, a Colorado team that does not have a sharp defense, that is down a guy in the secondary in Shiloh Sanders, figure it out. Take some extra time preparing, and hopefully you can't get the full book on either one of them. Hopefully. I think that's the case. But yeah, I don't see Dequan Finn as going out there and starting on Saturday. I think that would be wild, ridiculous in some ways, that he was able to recover that quickly and would give Baylor a better chance to win than Sawyer Robertson does. Because if we're talking about the first 3 games, Sawyer's game on Saturday I thought looked the best quarterback game so far. And Dequan Finn threw 2 or 3 touchdowns in week 1. I thought Sawyer was much more in command, gave you a better chance, and did not put you in as many bad situations. But this is going to be a real test for whomever of them goes out, especially if it's Sawyer Robertson. This is not a great defense, but it's a good football team. At least that's what we think in Colorado. And at least one comparable to you, 4-8 last year, 3-9 last year for both of these teams. And it's going to be a night game. It's going to be a great atmosphere there. It's going to be some altitude. It's going to be, big bright lights, TV cameras. So it's going to be a test for sure. And Colorado has the best corner in the Big 12 and maybe 2 of the best, like 3 or 4, because the kid McKinney, who's lined up on the other side, has had a pretty good year as well as Travis Hunter, who could be in New York City at the end of the year as a Heisman finalist and could well be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft next year. But we'll talk more about that personnel coming up tomorrow, mostly. In the next segment, I do want to talk about Colorado, the culture there, and specifically how it relates to their quarterback and their coach. And those two do know each other pretty well. So is this the kind of culture that sets the Buffs up for winning? And how does it relate to Baylor? Which would you rather have? That is coming up right after this. Because first I got to tell you about FanDuel. Now, you guys hear me talk about FanDuel a lot, right? You might know it as America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something just a little bit different for you today, because right now through September 22nd, that's Sunday, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download the one that is America's #1 sports book. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. If you guys are going to the game this weekend in Boulder, or you're going to another Baylor game this year, or really anything that needs tickets, I'm talking like theater, comedy shows, concerts, anything like that, Gametime is the only place to go, because you do not get the hassle that you get at other ticketing websites. You go to the app and you look on there, and the price you see, that all-in pricing, that is the price you're going to pay. You're also going to see the view from your seats as well before you hit purchase. Panoramic view. So if you're sitting behind a pole, you're at least going to know it before you hit purchase, and your purchase is backed by the #1 customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So without any further ado, what you need to go do, there we go, is go to Gametime. Download the Gametime app and take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, COLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Colorado is the opponent on Saturday, and they're the most talked about college football team in this great nation. Is it because they're an elite football program? No, it's not. It is mainly because of their head coach, Deion Sanders. But don't call him that. Don't call him that. Coach Prime is how he must be addressed. And his son, the star quarterback of the Buffs, Deion Sanders. And they've also got a guy who's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft in Travis Hunter. They have got a lot of personalities over there, but do they have the character to go along with those characters? It's oft maligned, this Colorado football culture and the turnover that they have between coaches and players from year to year, what the priorities are in that program, what the priorities are for their head coach. Is it CU Buffs football or is it Deion Sanders' career? That comes up all the time. Now, both these teams this weekend are in something of a crisis. Okay. One, Baylor, was 3-9 last year. The other, Colorado, started 3-0 and finished 4-8 for the season. One coach is probably on the hot seat in Dave Aranda. The other might not be that far away, because how long is the leash for Deion Sanders after Shedeur is drafted in the NFL? Who knows? But both are coming off bad years. One comes in with a ton of expectations. That would be Colorado for this year. And they both have somewhat difficult schedules to get to a bowl eligibility. Both are going through something of culture wars here, very differently. You know, Colorado, the culture is it the right culture? Is it one where players are put in a position to succeed? And is it one where the coach is giving it his all for the program and not for just his son and the NIL and the Rolls Royces and all the flash that comes with this Colorado football program right now? The other is asking, hey, can we get some flash? Can we get some flash here? Or some more substance, because it's been pretty vanilla at Baylor the last few years, and they haven't won very many games either. So you take two teams in the last 2 years who are on very different planes of the way they present themselves to the world, but neither one of them is winning football games at a good enough clip anyway. So which culture would you rather have? Would you rather have the demure of Dave Aranda and this Baylor football program that seems to be working its way back, at least on the recruiting trail and the young guys they've got on the field right now? Or would you rather have the pomp and circumstance, the flash and pizzazz, the Hollywood of Boulder, Colorado, which it seems to have right now, where you're going to sell out every game, you're going to play on national TV. Most games, you're going to have the two best skill position players on the field, but there's no guarantee at all you're going to win said game, or you're going to play in a bowl game, let alone something like the college football playoff, which a team that gets that kind of attention should be aspiring to. It's a good question in my mind. Which one would you rather have? And a lot of this talk obviously revolves around Deion Sanders, but also his son, Shedeur. And in a way, I feel bad for Shedeur. It's not an easy position that he's in. There's two different ways to look at this, and I don't think he's in an easy position. He's Deion Sanders' son. You could argue that Deion is using him or using Colorado as a way to prop up Shedeur rather than trying to make the Buffs great again. And through all of this, Shedeur actually is a damn fine quarterback. He really is. And he's not a schoolyard kind of quarterback the way you might expect with his athleticism and the way he can really uncork that ball. Man, he is an accurate passer who makes really good decisions and had the deck stacked against him last year with the offensive line that he had, and probably again this year. I don't think it's gotten all that much better. And Shedeur seems like a good enough kid. Like, he's got a good head on his shoulders for someone who's in that position. But then I hear the Colorado media taking it a bit too far in that sense. Good quarterback, and certainly one that is one of the most talented in the league. And he's not out there, making trouble necessarily. It's not like the old days of Colorado football when they'd bring the media guide in for a police lineup to identify these suspects. It's not like that. But I see Jake Schwartz. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Jake. Jake Schwartz after the game against Colorado State, a 28-9 Colorado victory, with Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter in there for their post-game media availability, and they invited the whole offensive line to stand up there behind them And it says Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and the entire offensive line. Leadership. Send tweet. Talk about leadership. Let's talk about leadership. Because the week before, Shedeur threw his team under the bus. Remember? Talking about that pick six. Well, how many times did Raiola get touched tonight? That's not a very nice thing to say about your offensive line. He threw his receiver under the bus in there too. That's not very nice. And a couple minutes before this great leadership moment, Shedeur refused to shake hands with the other quarterback, the one from Colorado State. Now, honestly, guys, I don't really care that he didn't shake hands with the other kid. That kid was running his mouth all week, and Shedeur decided to not shake hands with him. That's okay. There's room for that in sports. There's room for a little bit of bad blood animosity, but don't then 20 minutes later with this PR prop of the offensive lineman behind him say, boy, that's leadership right there. Is it? Is that leadership? Or is Deion Sanders the leadership we're looking at? The guy who in that same game was throwing downfield with a 19-point lead and under a minute left. Take away the fact that it's probably, in poor taste and running up the score, but would I want my kid or my favorite player being out there potentially taking a hit and risking injury when the game is over? Is that leadership? The guy who won't even let you call him by his first name, that he needs to be addressed as Coach Prime, is that the leadership we're talking about? Or is it the one who is telling some 20-something local news reporter who's probably making less than $40,000 a year that I cannot answer your question and I can't let you do your job because someone from CBS National whom you've never met wrote some things that were very nice about Coach Prime? Is that leadership? I think it's fair to question the leadership in this program because every week there are stories about this program that are not all that flattering. And I also understand this. Deion Sanders is very much a public figure, right? And one that program probably gets more bad press than it deserves. But with stuff coming out every week, at some point, if there's smoke, there's fire. And my good friend Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12 was saying yesterday on a podcast, which name I can't remember right now, saying Travis Hunter, good kid, Rocky culture. And he's getting just lambasted for that on Twitter. I don't see anything wrong with his statement. There's questions about that culture there. There's questions when, your main man to the head coach is Warren Sapp, who was one of the most disliked players in the history of the NFL by opponents and his teammates. I said this about Travis Hunter, man. I almost feel bad in a sense because he is a super talented player and seems like a good kid. His role models right now that he's learning from are Deion Sanders and Warren Sapp. Ooh, I don't know about that. Maybe he needs some better people in his corner in terms of how to handle the fame and the fortune and the way your teammates respect you. Because those guys, they had enemies everywhere, every locker room they were in. And so I do think that's unfair to come at Drake for saying that. And there's now questions about this culture from NFL executives. A couple of good stories recently. One of them in the New York Times, talking to two unnamed NFL GMs who have drafted quarterbacks in the top 5 of the draft. And they said, we've seen some great quarterbacks over the years who are unbelievably talented, but they just can't pull it off. There are many, many like that. And at this point, if I'm coming back to the league and kicking off a new regime with what I know, I would never have Shedeur kick things off with me. I'm trying to pinpoint why that is, and I just don't trust everything I'm seeing right now. He's got some money from the portal, and he's spending it the way he is. I just don't trust his maturity. I don't trust how he's going to be able to handle the limelight, which sounds odd because he should be able to handle it more than anyone because he's had it all his life. But is he going to be a distraction in that building? Is he going to irritate people? Do his teammates like him, or do they resent him? Now, that might be a little too far, but you've got to wonder, with someone who has been through this all, like Deion Sanders has, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, why execs are still having questions like this. Another one said, during the draft process, everyone pokes holes. Yes, people are going to look at different stuff, but I view it differently. Those types of things are all learned, maturing traits. We forget that kids are going to be kids. So what you look for is how quickly they will grow up. And obviously he's grown up in an athletic environment, but he goes on to say, like, there are certain things that quarterbacks do. Jaden Daniels having the receivers out at 5:30 in the morning for meetings. Matt Ryan used to take his offensive linemen to dinner once a week. Those things are learned. So he's saying there's no reason that Sawyer Sanders can't learn that. But some other things that, are a little worrisome if you're worrying about the Colorado football culture is, and for Sawyer Sanders in the next step, Deion has been his only coach. He's followed Deion. He didn't play major Texas high school football, even though he grew up in the Metroplex with some of the best high school football programs in the world, because he wanted to play for his dad at a Catholic school. And then same thing with, he's going to go to FAU, then he goes to Jackson State because that's where his dad is. And then he goes to Colorado because that's where his dad is. So you got to worry about that, because you got to worry about the way his dad is handling this. He's already gone on and said, for his son, specifically Sawyer, by the way, that he's not going to play anywhere cold. If any cold weather team has the top pick or wants to take Sawyer, not going to happen. He grew up in Texas, played in Jackson, played in Colorado. Season's over before it gets cold there. I'm just thinking way ahead. He also said on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast, I know he said about his son Sawyer, Shiloh, and Travis Hunter, I know where I want them to go. So there's certain cities that ain't going to happen. It's going to be an Eli Manning. We ain't doing it. Is that the culture that you want? Where you're going to have all these national TV games, but everyone's going to see you fall flat on your face? Is that what you want? I know it's not going to be determined by this game Saturday, but I find it a very interesting debate. Neither team won games last year. So would you rather have one that looks like it is building from the ground up, not a certainty, but looks like it's doing that? Or do you want this guy who's more worried about where his sons are going to play in the NFL next year, whether that city is going to be warm enough for them to play in, and just wants to have his buddies on the coaching staff that were some of the most disliked players in the NFL? I don't know. I guess the choice is yours. Now, Colorado has been great in the NIL space. Baylor trying to get there, trying to get better at that. But that's where ROY can step in. That stands for Return on You. And it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making direct contributions to your favorite program. Just the way NIL changed the game for athletes, ROI changes the NIL game for fans, okay? It gives you a chance to directly support the players, okay? You can directly support them through ROI and can play a key role in shaping their future of their favorite teams while their athletes maximize their NIL potential. Plus, it's no risk contributions, okay? Fans' contributions are securely held and are only distributed if the athlete makes the decision that aligns with the fan support. If not, the money is returned to the fan. So download ROI for iOS or Android and enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Just visit ROI.com for additional details. No purchase necessary. So get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROI. Okay, let's talk about some football here, because this is going to be an excellent atmosphere in Boulder on Saturday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. Going to be on Fox? I think that's Big Daddy Fox that it's going to be on. And the bright lights are going to be there. The cameras are going to be there. The former NFLers are going to be there. It's going to be a big time deal. It's going to be a sellout. They sell out all their games at Colorado now, which makes me yearn for those days when Baylor had that. We all do, right? This is not going to be a segment on bashing the fans section at games. That's for another day. We all want that. We all yearn for that. Dave Aranda yearns for it. This Baylor football team yearns for it. But there is one group that this might be the most important to, getting that atmosphere back at McLean Stadium. Here's the group Here's the group that Dave Aranda thinks needs this atmosphere the most.
It was cool to have just the energy in the stadium. I mean, all that is I mean, all of our people know that. They all feel that, and our recruits that come especially. And it may be the recruits maybe more feel that. And I think sometimes as players, they get locked into the game, which I appreciate and would wish more of them did that, But I think when the recruits come and they see all the energy and the excitement and all of it, I think it sends a really cool message and a good one that football is important here, that winning is important here. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And I think that message was sent today.
Okay, I don't know about that line in the middle there about wish more players were focused in on the game, but this is about the atmosphere. That's what we're going to focus on here. It's a point that I think a lot of us knew beforehand, but I do kind of have this respect for Dave Aranda in that he's not like calling out the fans. He hasn't done that. He's been asked about the fan base a couple times this year, and he said, first he said, we got to be better. We got to be cool for them to come up and show out for us. And then he's saying here, we're glad we have it. And it's really important for this next generation of building the foundation for Baylor football because these recruits love it. And this is why you take recruits out there for official visits for a game. And last year, it must have been pathetic. The team wasn't any good. And, it was not nearly a full building. And there wasn't a lot of atmosphere there. There wasn't a lot of energy on the sidelines, not a lot of energy in the stands. And you must have come here thinking, man, yeah, the place is beautiful, but I don't know, man. I can go up the road to Oklahoma State and it's an awesome atmosphere. I can go out to Tech and the place is packed and it's a blackout and it's awesome. And these are the teams that Baylor's competing with in the recruiting ranks. And absolutely that plays a part. Absolutely that plays a part. So, I'm not saying this is like a call to action because I think the students have showed out so far in these two games. And it was unfortunate that it was really, really hot still in the last one, so they didn't stick around the whole time. But it is important. And I'm glad that Dave is not only noticing that, but the importance on their end of being a good football team that we want to come out and support and watch and make a great atmosphere for. That's what's so important here. So I'm glad that it's a coach that's not calling out his fans, but also realizing that this is important, not trying to downplay it and not trying to say, the recruits only care about what happens in between the hash marks here, because that's not true. And if you want to get the best recruits in Texas, you're competing with the best programs in the country. If you want to get the next tier of athletes here in Texas, you're dealing with the best programs in the country. So you see the investment, the Fudge Football Operations Center, you see the care from this coaching staff and the energy that they can bring in practice. But at the end of the day, you are coming to a school for Saturdays, not just a practice. And you want to see that environment in McLean Stadium. And I really hope that turnaround is coming still. Because the next home game, hopefully will be a little cooler. And you're playing BYU, a team that'll bring a ton of fans. Long may it continue. Let's just say that. The Bears so far in 2 home games have given you the product to come out and support the team. And hopefully they win on Saturday and start a winning streak because BYU, while a solid team, is a winnable game. And let's hope that that becomes a great atmosphere for those recruits. Some very good recruits who are still on the line, by the way, coming to the game and seeing that and seeing what Baylor football could be, has been at some point, and can be again in the future. Let me know what you think about the atmosphere so far this year. What might need to change? I always love hearing your guys' input on that, and what you think about Colorado and this culture shift and this culture war and who is going to start at quarterback for the Bears on Saturday. Give me all your thoughts. Drop them down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about Deion Sanders and that Colorado football program. Get involved in the comment section. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video on YouTube. And with that, every time we're dropping it wherever you get your favorite podcast. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. It's full crossover mode tomorrow as we talk with Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs to really get in the weeds and preview this game that's coming up tomorrow on your favorite program, Locked On Baylor.